Thank you guys for tuning in the channel today. We're going to be building bag N and bag O of the Tekno SCT410 2.0. For the sake of time, I'm just going to be assembling one shock. They all assemble the exact same way, with the exception of the front shocks use a 700 shock oil, and the rear shocks will use the number 600 shock oil. But yeah, let's get started. First, maybe we'll assemble this right here, our aluminum shock body. You're going to take the smaller of the two O-rings, and it's going to go around the shock body like so. Next, let's go ahead and build the internals there. I like to take a little bit of shock oil, and we'll start with one of the blue O-rings. The shock oil is to help when you put your shock shaft through, not to hurt the O-ring in any way. Next, taking the little black washer there. And then next, be using another blue O-ring. Just a little bit of shock oil on that. So it should go O-ring, little black plastic washer, another O-ring, and then to top it on off, we're going to put this piece right here, and it will go on top like so. And when that is assembled, we'll take our little collar here, it's plastic, and screw that on top. Tighten it up. I want to go ahead and put this plastic piece on before I forget. It's going to thread like so. Leave it right there for now. That looks pretty good. Next, let's go ahead and assemble our shock shaft here. Picking this up, as you can see, this is a slot. It's not really round. And our plastic piece here, notice it's not round either. And those need to fit together. And notice you need to keep the numbers facing up. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this on. Should fit on it like so. And we'll go ahead and install this screw and this washer. Since you're going metal into metal, need to put a little Loctite on it. Grab our tiny washer here. We'll go on this screw. Grab a little bit of Loctite. And squeeze it on there. Like so. And then we will screw this into our shock shaft. And to make sure we get it good and tight, I'm going to grab my shock pliers over here. I want to hold it in there. And this is a tiny screw, so we don't want to overkill it. Get it good and snug there. With the Loctite, it should hold just fine. Now that we have our shock shaft assembled, I'm going to go ahead and insert it through the shock body. Should come out the other side. Next, let's go ahead and install this rubber boot here. And you can go ahead and slide it over this plastic collar there, like so. And we will push this up. Grab our shock tool. Hold it like so. And we're going to install this piece here. And I just screw it on by hand, try to keep it as straight as possible. All right, that's good and tight. Just go ahead and install the ball here. Should go like so. Next, let's go ahead. I'm going to get this screw ready. This little tiny O-ring will go on top of this. Going to go ahead and put this on my wrench and get it ready. Now that we have our screw ready to go, it's time to go ahead and add some shock fluid. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And I like to fill it up to the top. Then I'll slowly pump this up and down a few times to make sure I get the shock full of fluid. And if there's any bubbles, you need to find a stand like I have here. And I'm going to set this in my stand and kind of let all the bubbles kind of clear out of there. Maybe add just a touch more. And we'll let that sit for a few minutes and come back and we'll put our shock cap on and we'll bleed our shock. All right, let's go ahead and set this to the side. We're going to take our shock cap and we're going to install this larger O-ring into the top. And make sure it's seated good. We can take our shock now that we filled with oil. We pumped it a few times with it open. Let the oil get all in the system. Let the air bubbles come to the top. I'm going to take my shock cap and install it on to the shock body. These are the upgraded aluminum shock caps, the TKR6712A, if you guys are curious. You have to buy those separate. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that as much as I can. Now we're going to bleed this shock. And to do so, at a 45-degree angle, we're going to completely compress the shock. And oil should come out of it. If it doesn't, you need to re-oil the shock. You see oil is coming out. Looks really good. I'm going to take my screw here that I already put the O-ring on. And we're going to screw it down. And you don't want to over tighten this. If you do, the O-ring wants to come up and around the screw. Wipe off the excess oil. And now we're going to take it. Finish getting all that oil off of there the best we can. And once we got all the oil off, we're going to pump this thing up and down about 20 times. There's 1, 10, 20. And then we're going to have the shock shaft fully extended. And then the next step, we're going to remove the screw and then pretty much repeat our last step. We'll completely compress the shock and reinstall this screw here. And you want to make sure the oil comes out this time as well. So I'm going to completely compress the shock, holding it at a 45-degree angle. Take the screw out. We got oil coming out right there, so that looks good. With it completely compressed back in, I want to retighten this. And since oil came out both times, the shock should be bled correctly. And we'll go ahead and wipe off our excess oil. All right. With the oil wiped off, what we're looking for is kind of a completely dead shock here. We should be able to push it up. This little rubber sleeve here kind of pushes back on it. We should be able to pull it down. And as you can see, it doesn't pull back up. Just kind of a dead shock is how I like it. If you did these steps and it's pulling and pushing a whole lot, that means it's probably not bled correctly. and you need to try again. But looks pretty good. Like I said, the rubber sleeve I think is pushing it a little bit. Next, let's go ahead and install our spring. And we're going to take our piece here, and that's what's going to hold the spring. It's going to go over like so. And then we'll install our set screw here through the bottom. Looks good. We'll take our piece here, and it's going to slide through there. Now that you have your front and rear shocks assembled, it's time to install them on the vehicle. I've already done so. It's pretty straightforward. It's just getting a nut here that connects it to this shock tower, and same for the rear. And the other thing I wanted to point out is this is the front of the vehicle. Here's my servo. The black screw is on the right side. That is a clockwise normal thread. The silver screw is a reverse thread, so you want to turn it counterclockwise to install it onto the A-arm. And this is to keep those screws backing out as you're going over jumps. And on the back side, if I flip it over, notice again, the black screw is on the right side and the silver screw is on the left side. This can be confusing because the front shocks are mounted on the front and the rear shocks are mounted on the back. Be sure and pay close attention to the instructions when installing these two screws front and back. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been build bag N and O of the Tekno SCT410 2.0. Only one bag left, and then we'll probably do an electronics video install. So you guys stay tuned for that.